Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Charlie Nicklin. I'm the Chief Executive of I Agree. I'd like to thank you all for joining our May lunchtime lecture. I'd like to welcome Dr. Andy Scarlett as our guest speaker today. Andy has been involved in ag engineering since 1985. He spent 16 years at Scarlett Research Ltd, where he was latterly responsible for management of tractor and machinery related testing and research activities. In 2005, he formed Scarlett Research Ltd, which specialises in the delivery of R&D and technical consultancy for ag tractors and equipment to both the private and the public sectors. In today's lecture, Andy will be talking about the recently republished AEA Tractor and Trailer Braking Guide, Look Behind You, an important subject that just never seems to go away in agricultural circles. Just before Andy starts, you're all currently muted. If you would like to ask questions, just use the chat function at the bottom of your screen, and at the end of the presentation, we'll unmute you so you can ask your question. So enough from me, over to you, Andy.
Okay, thank you very much, Charlie, and thanks for a lovely introduction. We'll now see if the wonders of technology actually work. Firstly and foremost, welcome everybody. I had a quick scroll through some of the list of people that are attending or looking in today. Many friends. If the devil cast his net now, what a haul he would achieve. So onto the subject, the AEA Look Behind You guide to tractor trailer braking, or more importantly, why in 2021 is Scarlett still talking about tractor trailer braking in the UK? Either he's a sad old git, or perhaps there is something to talk about. I'll let you make up your mind by the end of the presentation, but let's go through and see. So, as if to cast the memory back, and indeed to review where we've been, here's my timeline and involvement in this subject area, which strangely enough I'd had nothing to do with until about 2005. Back in 2008, I convened a agricultural transport conference on behalf of the institution at Peterborough, and we had about 80 attendees, and this was quite a hot subject at that point in time. In 2009, Scarlett Research Limited undertook an industry-sponsored, or HSE DFT industry-sponsored study into tractor trailer braking performance, which uncovered some rather unpleasant findings. The first AEA Look Behind You guide was published with input from myself in 2010, and also at that time I produced and started to deliver tractor trailer braking training courses for farmers and ag dealers. In 2012, I, together with a number of others, contributed towards the development of a tractor trailer scheme, which was put to the Department for Transport to try and achieve updating of current legislative requirements in the UK. That got very close to fruition, but unfortunately failed at the final hurdle. In 2015, I assumed responsibility for BAGMA brake safe training in the UK. 2017, I was involved with an agricultural vehicle study concerning ABS on behalf of European Commission. And then finally in 2019, 2020, we updated the Look Behind You guide, which was released last November. So 15 years, a damn long while to be talking about tractor trailer braking. Everybody would get sick and tired of it by now, you'd have thought. And it would seem that I've become typecast. Haven't in actual fact, because I've been doing a lot of other things, but you just don't hear about those. Honest, promise. But nonetheless, there's still a story to give here. So what is it and why are we talking about it? Well, this is the front cover of the Look Behind You guide. As I say, this publication released last autumn. So far, about 1,500 hard copies have gone out and about 2,000 downloads of the electronic version. So somebody is interested in reading about the subject. What about the history of the guide? Well, the first version was published back in 2010. At that time, it was produced by the AEA Service Managers Group. Various tractor manufacturers produced copies in their own corporate liveries. The purpose of that document at that time was to highlight the need for effective trailer braking systems to avoid premature failure of tractor braking systems. That was mainly a result of tractors going a little bit quicker back then, and also, more importantly, inadequate brakes on being a widespread problem in the UK tractor and trailed implement fleet. So it was distributed via ag machinery dealers, and it became a useful reference. But that was 10 years ago, yeah, 11 years ago now. And unfortunately, things have moved on. So how have they moved on? And what's changed as far as tractor trailer usage today in the UK, or rather over the last 10 years? Well, we'll all have seen the fact that farm business structures have changed during that time. Farms have become larger, fewer, larger, higher horsepower tractors are required to travel further on road in order to perform their operations over a greater geographic area. That means more transport and more time spent on road. The majority of on-road ag transport operations are performed by tractors today in the 150 to 300 horsepower range. Seems ridiculous, but it is. That's 150, 200 horsepower tractor is a medium-sized tractor today. More than 80% of new tractors in this power range have what I would call a high-speed capability, namely that they can travel faster than 40 kilometers per hour or 25 miles an hour. And those sorts of tractors have been readily available on the UK market for over 15 years. The UK market uptake of those faster tractors, faster conventional tractors, has been second only to the German market during that time. So we have embraced them in no uncertain terms. What I'm talking about effectively is 50k conventional tractors with a front axle suspension. Who today, if you're buying a 160 horsepower, 200 horsepower tractor, doesn't buy one of those. Also, the trailers and the trailed implements have changed during that time as well. The majority of newer trailers used by contractors and farmers in the UK today have larger capacity, generally 14 to 18 ton carrying capacity. That reflects the increased holding tank capacity of modern harvesting machinery and also the tractor power available to tow these trailers at speed. So, but the bad thing is, unfortunately, current UK tractor and trailer road regulations are rather outdated and they don't accommodate modern agricultural machinery or those typical operating practices that surround them. They don't, for instance, permit the legal use of trailers of more than about 13.5 tons carrying capacity, which is interesting really because the most popular size sold in the UK currently is 16 tons. So it would appear from that fact that users are ignoring the current regulations and just hoping that they won't be enforced too vigorously. Given the restrictions on our police force, that's probably a fair bet. So why update the Look Behind You document? Well, as I've mentioned, over the last 10 years, tractor size, power and maximum speed capabilities increased. In 2010, the average tractor horsepower sold in the UK was 140 horsepower. Today, it's 170 horsepower. More importantly, during that time, the number of above 200 horsepower tractors has increased, sold per year, has increased from 10% of the total to 22%. So a very significant shift. To say trailer size has increased. Some UK legislation has been updated, as I mentioned in a few moments. EU braking legislation has been introduced, and also trailer braking systems have improved. We've seen a marked move towards air brake systems on tractors and trailers. That's never a good idea to go backwards when you're trying to go forwards in the presentation. That's better. Okay, so today the vehicle combinations are larger and faster, and so therefore the demands on their braking systems are greater. The tractor trailer braking systems are more complex. The desirable system performance characteristics are not always appreciated by the end user, and system and operation and maintenance requirements are also not always fully recognized or understood. So there's still a very big need to raise awareness and understanding. People call for clear, concise guidance. Well, here it is. So what was the remit of the Look Behind You guide, the revised guide? The target readership were farmers, farm managers, tractor drivers, farm mechanics, and agricultural dealer technicians. In other words, anyone who may either purchase a trailer or a trailed implement, influence a purchasing decision, actually use the equipment, or be involved with its maintenance. If you're within that spectrum, you need to read this guide. The purpose was to provide a concise technical overview, not a comprehensive reference to bore people to death. You may have achieved that anyway, but that wasn't the intention. We wanted to raise user awareness to show what's actually needed from a tractor-trailer braking system, both legally and also ideally. Those aren't necessarily one and the same thing. Also to highlight the good features and to illustrate those best avoided, because the consumer does need to be a little bit wary. So in other words, to help users make informed purchasing decisions and also recognize shortfalls in their existing vehicles, to manage risk, improve safety by encouraging correct operation and appropriate maintenance of that equipment. So if I can just pass over to a colleague of mine who will tell you all about it.
What might make you think about trailer brakes? Tractor not stopping quite as well as it should? Worries about expensive tractor brake repairs? Fear of being involved in an accident? A potential hefty fine? Or far worse than that, a tragic loss of life? The actual reason doesn't really matter. The important thing is you should think. And also, you should read this guide. My name's Andy Scarlett. On behalf of the AEA, we've prepared this guide to help highlight the main points of tractor-trailer braking that you, the user, need to know about. It's some while since the last Look Behind You guide was prepared. Back then, the problem was a premature tractor brake failure, often caused by poor trailer brakes. But many things have changed since then. Trailers are larger and heavier. Tractors are larger and also are travelling faster. UK legislation has changed as well. There's no doubt whatsoever that trailer brakes are a lot better than they ever were, but more still needs to be done. This guide has been compiled to give the information to you, the user. Still covers the basics, but also highlights that important extra information you need to know.
Now, that's just succinctly said what I've said in the last few slides, but that's actually the introduction to the new Look Behind You guide and leads us nicely on to what that actually comprises. To do anything today, it's not just good enough to have a document that you hand out to people. You really need to be electronic, or better still, for it to be an app, even if you have it on a phone that's so small you can't read the bloody thing. Sorry, I'm an agricultural engineer at heart. So therefore, it was decided that we should include in the document video clips and animations to help retain people's attention and to highlight key features and key bits of subject that we're trying to get across to the reader. So these actually appear at the beginning of each section. Generally, they're 40 to 50 seconds long. They introduce and highlight particular issues covered in the text, and they pose questions to the reader and encourage you to read on and find the answers. And so we'll be showing a few of these during the course of this presentation. In order to obviously show these, we actually had to develop interactive PDF and electronic book, EPUB formats of the document. And in those instances, video clips and animations are actually downloaded as an integral part of the document and then can be played without the actual reader having internet access. So in this particular instance, we've got two alternative formats for the guide. As I mentioned, there's interactive PDF and EPUB versions. They're suitable for use on PCs and also on tablet devices. Also, there's a conventional PDF version, which actually incorporates YouTube hosted video clips. So you can still look at the video clips, but you need internet access to view them. You just click on the necessary icon within the document, and straight away it takes you to YouTube. All of these electronic versions can be downloaded free from a dedicated AEA website, which I'll give more details of later on. The other version is a hard copy. And yeah, just a conventional landscape booklet, but it incorporates these QR, quick reference codes, the sorts that you see everywhere nowadays, these little square bits and pieces, which can be scanned by a tablet or a smartphone. And if you do that, when you get to the relative section in the document, in the actual hard copy booklet, then your smartphone or tablet will play the relevant video clip that's hosted on YouTube. So there's just no getting away from me one way or another. So let's get on with the actual detail. What's included in the new Look Behind You guide? Well, the last guide in 2010 was 20 pages long. This one's now 40. That's not solely a reflection of the fact that I'm starting to get a little bit beyond myself, but just the sheer amount of information that now needs to be transferred. You'll notice, for instance, in section 6, the tractor trailer braking systems. Back in 2010, we were primarily looking at single line hydraulic systems. Now we have also dual line hydraulic, but more importantly, dual line pneumatic systems, which are probably becoming dominant in the UK now. There are a lot of other factors as well to incorporate. So let's just pick and choose and go through a few and see what the guide says about them. What's required from a tractor trailer braking system?
During braking, the tractor and trailer must work together. After all, they are linked by the trailer drawbar as one physical unit. For the sake of stability and safety, the separate tractor and trailer braking systems must respond as one. They should slow down each vehicle at the same rate, and the trailer shouldn't push the tractor during braking. That all seems very logical, doesn't it? But in practice, it doesn't always work out that way. So what do we need from a tractor-trailer braking system? And how exactly should it work? Read on and we'll explain.
As you can see, the way that the guide has been produced is to try and encourage people to view those video clips and then to look in the guide, in the text, and actually get the more detailed information. So exactly how should a tractor trailer braking system work? The ideal situation, or the ideal scenario, is that the braking effort between the tractor, the towing vehicle, and what's following behind it, be it a trailer or trailed implement, should be balanced. It should actually be distributed in proportion to the actual loads on the axles. And frequently, for instance, when a trailer is fully laden, there's more weight on the trailer, on the 2 trailer axles or 3 trailer axles than there actually is on the tractor. So we need more braking effort from the, slightly more braking effort from the trailer. But the key thing is, when you look at the braking efficiencies, they are more or less matched. And these values which are there, shown above that diagram, are actually the UK legal requirements for traveling above 25 miles per hour or 40k. Another key feature is, though, it's great having all this braking performance, and it's got to work when the trailer is fully laden. But also, when the trailer is unladen, something's got to lower the braking performance in order to match the reduction in weight. Otherwise, the wheels lock, tires skid, and the whole thing gets out of control, and also wears the tires dramatically. So therefore, when unladen, that trailer must generate less braking effort, but still the same braking efficiency as what's pulling it. More common scenario is something slightly different. Yes, the tractor's still up there, 65% braking efficiency, no problem. But the trailer, when fully laden, is probably in the region of 20 to 30% efficiency. So suddenly there's a big mismatch there. Whenever the brakes are put on, that trailer is going to try and push that tractor via the drawbar. That leaves the tractor braking system to make up some of the shortfall that the trailer isn't achieving. Also, we find a situation whereby, if not fitted with the right equipment or not adjusted correctly, the trailer won't adjust its maximum braking effort from laden to unladen, because something which is known as load sensing either isn't fitted or doesn't work properly. in days gone by, you didn't need load sensing because, in quite honesty, the trailer brakes weren't good enough to really cause much of a problem. They wouldn't lock up. Now, if you need better brakes, then you do. So, okay, we're talking about things being heavier and also things going faster. And we know that those are changes that have occurred in the last 10 years. But what actually are the effects of speed or weight when it comes to vehicle braking systems? Does it have the same effect or not? Let's hear what the guide has to say.
Your new trailer might be a bit larger and heavier than the last one, or your new tractor might be able to travel faster than the old one. Where's the worry? What difference does it make? You would expect that the tractor and trailer braking systems will have to work a bit harder than they did before. But will adding more weight or increasing the speed have the same effect on the vehicle's brakes? Surprisingly not. Speed has a much greater effect. This is a tractor-trailer combination, weighing 20 tons and travelling at 20 miles per hour. But what effect would increasing either the weight or the speed have on the vehicle's braking load? If we increase the weight by 50% up to 30 tons, the vehicle's braking load would also increase by 50%, or 1.5 times more. Alternatively, the tractor and trailer stayed at the same weight, but travelled 50% faster, then the braking load would also increase, but this time by 125%. That's 2.25 times more. So, increasing speed has a much greater effect on braking load than increasing weight.
And just to recap on that, obviously that's due to the simple effect that kinetic energy is given by the equation half equals mv squared. And so V has a squared effect upon kinetic energy, whereas mass just has a straight singular effect. That is the reason why, if you've got a faster tractor, you have to have substantially better trailer brakes. Otherwise you will simply wear them out. So what are the UK braking regulations and legislation as far as tractor trailer braking is concerned? How heavy can it be? Well, in 2015, the tractor trailer maximum gross weight was increased up to 31 tons. So that's officially how heavy a total combination can be. That's tractor trailer plus load. But unfortunately, at that same time, the maximum weight permitted for an agricultural trailer wasn't increased. It stayed at the same level where it's been since 1986, namely just a little bit over 18.25 tons. Now that brings us to a slight issue. A typical 14-ton capacity trailer today will have an unladen weight of about 5 tons. So if the maximum weight it can be is 18.25 in use, that means you've got about a 13.25 payload available before you go overladen and illegal. Not quite ideal. Doesn't mean there's any problem in selling bigger, heavier trailers. Just officially, you can't actually travel them, take them on the road, or use them on the road carrying their full capacity. Now, this is so widely ignored that it hardly needs to be on the statutes, but it's there. Fine until somebody has an accident, and then the book gets thrown at them, unfortunately. What about speed? How fast can it travel? Well, actually, the maximum road speed in the UK for agricultural tractors has been 40 miles per hour, 65 kilometers per hour since 1986. However, unsuspended tractors, those without suspension, aren't permitted to exceed 25 miles per hour, 40 kilometers per hour, in other words. And that was actually raised up finally from 20 miles per hour as recently as 2015. To travel above 40 kilometers per hour, the vehicle requires full suspension, better braking, ABS, and a whole host of other features. So these modern conventional tractors that we've all encountered today and make up 80% of high horsepower sales, with front suspension and a capability of traveling at 30 miles per hour or 50k, are just simply not recognised by current UK road vehicle legislation. Legislation is worded that it's not illegal to sell them, it's illegal to drive them above 25 miles per hour. And of course, nobody does. Truth is, everybody turns a blind eye, including the law enforcement fraternity, because it may well be better to drive slightly faster and not hold up other road users, cause them inconvenience, and encourage them to do silly things in trying to overtake when they otherwise wouldn't. That little 5 miles per hour between 25 and 30 often will make a difference. But if you're going to be going faster and you're going to be going heavier, then the braking systems have got to be there to compensate. If you're going to bend the rules in one direction, then at least get the hardware that's capable of doing the job. Which brings us around to load sensing. Remember, I mentioned that once trailer brakes, or any implement brakes for that matter, start to get a higher level of performance, then if the weight of the vehicle changes during use, you need to be able to change the braking effort that it produces. So what's the guide got to say about that?
Do you need load sensing? Does your trailer have good brakes? Does its axle loadings change in use from laden to unladen? Does it travel on road both when laden and unladen? The answer is yes to all these questions. Then yes, you need a load sensing system to prevent overbraking, wheel locking, and excessive tyre wear during unladen braking. So this is the load sensing unit installed on a trailer. But what actually does it do? How does it work? And should you ever check it? Read the guide to find out the answers to these questions.
Now, there's actually a lot more in the Look Behind You guide about load sensing systems and how they work and how you should check them than I will cover today. But just as a little introduction, a load sensing valve is effectively a variable pressure reduction valve, pressure reducing valve. It's fitted on the trailer or trailed implement chassis, and its position is adjusted by the suspension movement of the vehicle. Effectively senses the weight which is carried by the vehicle. That then moves the valve, and that changes the pressure which goes to the brakes. So when the vehicle is fully laden, full pressure that comes from the tractor to operate the brakes goes straight through the load sensing valve and puts the brakes on, no problem, because you want full braking effort in that instance. But on the right hand side, when the trailer is partly laden or unladen, then only a proportion of the pressure coming from the tractor actually puts the brakes on. So consequently, the braking effort is reduced and the wheels don't lock up. Great, no problem. But the thing is, these obviously valves are under the suspension of the trailer, and whenever the trailer suspension moves, they are moving. So it's fitted, and that's it. Is it ever checked? Is it ever maintained? These valves have moving components. Are they ever renewed? Well, no, because it worked fine when we bought the trailer, and therefore it'd be fine for the next 20 or 30 years, because that's the expected life expectancy of a modern trailer for frontline use in the UK. But this valve actually holds complete control over the performance of the trailer brakes. Doesn't matter how big the brake drums are or the brake shoes or how marvelous the axles are. If this valve isn't set up properly, everything downstream of it is never going to see the pressure to actually put the brakes on properly in the right manner. That's a slight concern. These valves were hardly ever used 10 years ago. Now they will be present on virtually all trailers sold of large capacity. And their correct setup and maintenance is absolutely vital. which brings us nicely on to braking system inspection, maintenance and testing. So what's required there?
Let's face a few facts. Every owner and user of vehicles that travel on UK roads have a legal duty to maintain those machines in a safe and roadworthy condition at all times. It doesn't just stop there. If machines are used in the field and never go on the road, they still have to be maintained and kept in a safe condition. So it's absolutely essential you inspect and maintain the tractor and trailer braking systems. Okay, you do that. Is that enough? Do you know if those braking systems are actually going to perform and deliver the necessary level of efficiency that you require in order to be safe and legal? Truth is, you don't. So what do you do? What's the answer? The guide shows you ways in which those questions can be answered.
Which is exactly what the guide does. I can't go into a great deal of detail with regard to this today for fear of making the presentation way too long, but I'm happy to take questions concerning this. However, notice that we talk about inspection, maintenance, and testing. As the man in the video has just said, those are all important elements, and it's no good doing one without the other. Rather perturbed in actual fact that in a farm contractor magazine last week, there was an opinion piece talking about tractor trailer testing, brake testing, and it was very nicely presented. However, it said that there were no clear statutory requirements for braking performance in the UK on agricultural vehicles. And the best thing a customer could do was to develop best practice and follow it. That was supposedly written by a chartered safety practitioner. I've never heard a lot of rubbish in my entire life. As you can see from this guide, that simply is not the case. So there's a lot of misinformation out there, but information, the correct information, is readily available. So tractor trailer braking, why can't we stop yet in more ways than one? Is the vehicle specification adequate? Is the tractor or the trailer spec suitable for the job in question? Well, all agricultural tractors which are placed on the UK market have to meet strict EU type approval requirements before they're sold. So therefore, the designs are actually verified in terms of braking, steering, cab safety, many safety related aspects. So generally, if the vehicle is maintained properly, you know that when it came out the factory, it's right. Now, on the other side of the coin, in the UK market, ag trailers are actually not subject to any pre-sale design approval whatsoever. They are in many EU countries, not through EU regulations, but through those own individual country national regulations, but not in the UK. In the UK, everybody plays it with a straight bat. So all the manufacturers will have read construction and use regulations, and they will have made their vehicles and constructed them to be compliant with them. Okay, let's carry on in that faith. Fine, so it goes to the user. As soon as the vehicle goes to the user, it's the user's responsibility to both ensure the vehicle can generate the necessary braking performance and also maintain it so it continues to do so throughout its working life. There is a legal obligation on them to do that. It's there in statute. It's not a grey area. It's not uncertain. It's there. Whether people want to know about it is another thing, but all road users are required to maintain their vehicles in a safe and roadworthy condition, because that ensures the safety of other road users and also, of course, the general public. So are tractors and trailers and trailed implements maintained adequately? Well, tractors tend to be. It's easier. They're the main prime mover. More attention is, they're high value, more attention is paid to them. But unfortunately, less attention is often paid to trailers and trailed implements, because intermittent use, and let's face it, if the body tips and the indicators work and the brake rams appear to go in and out, job's a good one, isn't it? Finally, what about driver capability? Are faster, heavier tractor-trailer combinations being driven by inexperienced or poorly trained operators? Or indeed a tired operator after they've been corn carting for the last 12 hours? Is he or she driving a vehicle of equivalent weight of an HGV, way above 25 tons, probably often way above 30 tons, on a car license? Now, responsible businesses, I know, make sure that their staff are adequately trained and are adequately experienced. It doesn't necessarily have to be by a training course to do that job, because the kit is expensive and the potential for something to go wrong is always there. But these are things that we all need to bear in mind. So back to the look behind you. These are some of the companies, both vehicle manufacturers and equipment manufacturers, that supported and contributed towards the Look Behind You guide, alongside the AEA, which through its service managers group put a very great deal of effort and significant resource into generating this revision and making it freely available to the general public in the UK. So how do you get it? Quite simply, here we are, online via this dedicated AEA website. As I mentioned, you can download the EPUB or the PDF versions to run on your PC or on your tablet, or you can even request a free hard copy from that self-same website. As I mentioned, about 1,500 of those copies have gone out so far since November, and we've had about 2,000 website views and downloads. There was an editorial in a recent well-known UK machinery magazine that said that the agricultural world needed clear, concise guidance on the usage, maintenance, and testing of agricultural tractors and trailers. It's there. Self-same magazine actually carried the release information for this guide last November. So please, I would encourage you to go to the website if you haven't already, download it and have a look at it. And if you find any mistakes, please get in touch with the AEA. Don't come back to me, because I'm only the person that was paid to do the job. Thank you very much for listening. And I do hope you've got some questions, some of which I will be able to answer. And if not, I'll pass them over to my colleague in the videos. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Andy. So we've got a few questions. First one is from Mark Andrews. Do you want to unmute yourself, Mark, and ask?
Thank you very much. My question's really on, first, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, yes. No problem.
Okay. My question's on electric brakes that I've seen in different parts of the world, used on quite heavy agricultural tractor and trailer applications. Given the reducing costs of electrics and electronics in sensors, in controllers and actuators, do you see any sign of e-brakes coming into the UK or Europe?
In honest, when you say electric brakes, do you mean electronically controlled brakes?
And actuated, actually, on the trailers.
In simple answers, then no. No, and almost certainly none whatsoever, very, very unlikely to be. You will find, with the exception of, say, for instance, parking brakes on electronically actuated parking brakes, which we've seen on tractors now for the last 7 years, 8 years, more than that, perhaps even 10 years on many. But other than that, the agricultural market will always tend to follow the on-road vehicle market. And at the moment, pneumatic brakes tend to be the key driver in agriculture, in HGVs, albeit frequently electronically controlled EBS systems, using CAN networks and the like, which can then be used for stability control and whatever. We in agriculture are unfortunately dark ages behind the rest of the on-road vehicle industry. So far behind it is almost laughable. And we are struggling to actually pick up and implement technology which they almost have moved beyond now.
Yeah.
And we aren't even doing that very effectively. So if I'm frank, we need all the help we can get just to try and get to nappies, let alone even get into long trousers. So for that
Thank you very much.
nothing else, I'm afraid, I don't think so.
Yeah, thank you. Good answers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from me. Given the mass and the speeds and the cost of the equipment these days, what are your views on why the industry doesn't seem to want to accept MOTs or plating of vehicles each year? Because it seems to have gone around for a long, long time, this does.
Yeah, it has. And it's ridiculous, if I'm honest with you. The actual agricultural tractor trailer braking scheme that I mentioned was a joint initiative by the AEA, BAGMA, NFU and NAEC to achieve just that, to permit gross weights and trailer weights and vehicle operating speeds to be increased legally if the vehicles were subject to an annual test. That annual testing regime is used in many, many different countries, roadworthiness testing for agricultural vehicles. Say, for instance, in Germany, you've got to have it. All the tractors and load carrying vehicles have a test every 12 months. They're really big stuff every 6 months, undertaken by dealers, but adequately registered and to a defined requirement, defined standards. That has been introduced now in the UK for faster tractors used for commercial haulage purposes. But if I'm honest, those are only the people that use white diesel and travel more than 15 miles from their operating base and whatever. And it was DFT expected it would apply to about 200 vehicles in the whole of the UK. Such is not happening. The industry needs to work as one, and if I'm frank, end users need to act responsibly. When the way that UK law works, though, is it will make an example out of an end user when they cross the line too far and somebody is injured or, dare I say it, tragically killed. And when they do that, they hope that that will send ripples out across the pond. Everybody else takes notice, and we all are good boys and girls for the next 18 months or 2 years. And then we gradually forget about it, like all human beings, and then just go back to our old ways. And that so frequently has happened in the past, and I believe will happen in the future. There's absolutely no economic reason why the right equipment can't be there and can't be inspected and tested and used in a responsible way. But the industry doesn't appear to wish to go in that direction, whilst it can get away with relatively lax enforcement activity within the UK.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Jamie Sturziker. If I've got your name right, I apologise if I haven't. So, Andy, what is your opinion on increasing campaigns surrounding condition of trailer braking systems rather than the efficiency of the system? Do you think there needs to be an MOT-style regulation for ag trailers, like there is for more strictly governed HGVs? Or do we need to see an update to the regulations surrounding agricultural vehicle usage on the road?
I would like to see the latter, an update to agricultural vehicle usage on the road, whether it's taken through a voluntary initiative or indeed, more importantly, it will almost have to be a regulated initiative to have teeth. But there's always a good reason why not to do something, be it an industry which is suffering from the effects of Brexit or lack of government time to pass legislation or to actually bring in a structure to do something about it. So, dare I say it, until a dramatic headline grabbing event occurs in the UK, which involves the maiming or injury of a substantial number of people, which causes public outcry, I really think very little is going to happen, because there isn't enough issue out there to cause government action. There are greater issues out there elsewhere. And it's a very, very sad scenario, but it's going to happen sooner or later, because everything's getting bigger, heavier, faster, and more intense. And we're going to see greater changes to farm structures and farm businesses in the coming years, in the next 5 to 10 years. We've seen them over the last 10 years. We're going to see even more in the future. So I really would like to see something, but it needs to be something which everybody is prepared to buy into. And that's politics, and that's always a difficult thing.
Okay. Martin Coulter.
Thanks, Charlie. Andy, I just wanted to ask about, have you compared this to HGVs, which are currently on the road, which may be looking at the tractor and trailer gross weights there? For example, HGV trailers with 3 axles.
Yeah, most certainly. In actual fact, the agricultural tractor trailer scheme originally back in 2012 was trying to suggest exactly the same axle load limits for ag stuff as it would for HGVs. In other words, now you might have to correct me then, because I'm getting a bit of a sad old sod, and my memory's starting to get poor, but I seem to remember it was 8.5 tons per axle if they're road friendly suspension, and 7.5 if they're not, or at least something in those areas anyway. 24 tons across the bogey on a 3-axle HGV trailer if it's road friendly, and slightly less if it's not. And those were the sorts of requirements, because at the moment there's no benefit in having a 3-axle trailer. All that you get is a heavier unladen weight, which in theory removes some of your available payload, which is bad news. So you can carry as much with a tandem axle trailer as you can with a tri. There doesn't stop people making tri-axle trailers, doesn't stop people going in that direction. Things need to be regulated in a greater form, and unfortunately they're not. Tractor manufacturers and trailer manufacturers frequently don't talk to each other enough. There are new braking regulations in the European Union now, which for once actually make much more sense and make it clear what tractors have to do and trailers have to do, and how their braking systems are meant to cooperate and work together. Now that's marvelous. That's really good. But unfortunately, those regulations are optional. They aren't mandatory, which is suboptimal, shall we say. So I hope that answers your question. But yeah, it would be good to go. They are based, all of those braking regulations that I've just mentioned, they are based upon HGV type braking regulations, HGV performance, HGV response time requirements. It's no good if the tractor brakes come on and the trailer brakes come on about 2 seconds later. It's no good whatsoever. They have to come on within a half a second. Otherwise, the tractor's doing all the work.
Thank you, Andrew.
No problem.
Could I just ask another additional question?
Yeah.
Has the AEA ever talked to the government and the Department of Transport about this?
The AEA has spent, together with BAGMA and NFU and NAC, but the AEA especially, is talking to government all the time. And indeed, in the period of 2011 to 2015, we were talking to government almost solidly with regard to it. We've had so many meetings with the Department for Transport, and indeed got almost as far as to getting this actual system implemented. Had all the requirements laid out, everything, and largely accepted by the Department for Transport and DVSA and many others. It took a long, long, hard slog. And then unfortunately we fell at the last fence due to slight disagreements within the consortium who were supporting the scheme. I'm afraid I can't say any more than that.
Thank you.
We got close, and one day somebody will, if I haven't shuffled off this mortal coil by that point in time, somebody may actually drag the file out the filing cabinet and say, oh, look, there's a good idea. Let's do that. But it is all there. There are very, very rarely any new ideas in agricultural engineering, just new ways of doing things, and somebody that tries to take the credit for somebody else's work. I know I've done exactly that in the past.
Thank you.
Okay, Richard Robinson.
Yes, thank you very much, Andy, and it's been really, really useful. I was wondering whether, from memory, the hitch requirements are based on roughly the legal limit. So if everybody's operating above that, isn't it time we looked at those regulations also? Okay.
Interesting thing is, there's no legal limitation in UK law as far as what the hitch will take. Nothing there whatsoever in construction and use regs. It never actually mentions a pickup hitch or a drawbar for a tractor. Tractor trailer couplings are just not there. Now, there are limitations which are specified when a tractor is approved prior to sale, and that has to be stated in the tractor handbook. And typically, for a pickup hitch, it's a maximum load of 3 tons or less. If it's a 80mm ball, that can be higher, depending on the construction of the vehicle and whether the tires and the back axle are made to take the load. But this is one area, for instance, where revised requirements in the Republic of Ireland are way ahead of those in the UK, because they took the bull by the horns. So their legislation was outdated and said, come on, we need to do something about this. And so they said, okay, you can have tandem axle trailers, triaxle trailers up to these speeds if they have these performance specifications. And if you've got a pickup hitch, the maximum it can take is 3 tons from the trailer. If you've got a 90mm ball, 80mm ball, I forget which it is, sorry, that can take 4 tons. And so they actually put in those regulations in their statutes. There's nothing in the UK whatsoever. Most trailers, especially big trailers, will put more than 3 tons on the drawbar of a tractor. And that, of course, is static load. Dynamic load is going to be in excess of double that, even if it's got a sprung drawbar on it.
Yeah, thank you. I think
I forgot, of course, you'd know a little bit about this because you used to make them, didn't you?
Well, we still do, but not for tractors. But we had to get our just to bore everybody a little bit, our Mercedes hitches tested by DEKRA in Dresden. So we were the first English customer for DEKRA. And they, of course, had been testing hitches for what was the East German market, so knew a bit about hitches, despite being Germans otherwise. So they got lots of good experience. In fact, broke our original effort, which we thought was all right, and showed us what to do to make it so much better. But I know, in practice, what you say is absolutely right, that the hitches we have seem to stand a lot more than they were supposed to, but they really ought to be part of the whole package.
Pickup hitches by rights, at least up until 2016, were always required to be subject to fatigue testing. Dynamic test of 2 million cycles, loading it diagonally onto the, from sort of between the vertical, placing a combined vertical and horizontal load onto the hook, or the drawbar for that matter, and doing it for about 2 weeks solidly, day and night, to see whether or not anything broke. We used to undertake that sort of test work at Scarlett Research Institute in my time there. That requirement still exists for tractors used over 40 kilometers per hour, not for those under 40 kilometers per hour. That's there in the type approval requirements for agricultural tractors, but of course, there's nothing for agricultural trailers to check the fatigue loading of those, or indeed even how thin you can wear a hitch ring down to before you need to remove it and have a new one placed in its. So yeah, not ideal.
Okay, Peter Rogers, I think your question's probably been answered, hasn't it? Unless there's anything specific you want to clarify.
Well, it has in part, but what really appalls me about this is that I was invited by the late Mike Dwyer to give a presentation on behalf of trailer manufacturers in 1979 on this subject. The discussion point then was a proposed Department of Transport Code of Practice on tractor trailer braking.
Yep.
And after that, I was invited by a gentleman who dealt with that side of things at the Department of Transport for a meeting with him in London, which I attended. And the outcome of that was the hydraulic trailer braking valve being fitted to all tractors. Now, accepting what you said, and I know that tractors have generally got bigger and faster, or can be bigger and faster, but we were making 12-ton trailers in those days, so the payload was about what maximum payload was about what it is now. And here we are, more than 40 years on, still talking about this, and it seems to me there's still a reticence from the Department of Transport to actually address this issue for agriculture, both on axle weights, braking requirements, etc. I mean, is that how you find it from what you've said?
The Department for Transport would sort of take a pragmatic view, I believe would be the best phrase to use, in terms of, right, okay, the requirements are there, they're set out in construction and use regulations. It used to be the threshold. A bad thing, dare I say it, a fundamental flaw in all this legislation is the fact that there is a speed threshold. It used to be 20 miles per hour. If you work up to 20 miles per hour, you need one set of requirements. If you go above 20 miles per hour, you need a different set. More efficiency, more braking performance, many other bits and pieces. Great, okay. Most tractors wouldn't have gone above 20 miles per hour at the time of the 1979 code, which I know quite well, or indeed when C&U had its last big revision in 1986. That's now changed. That speed threshold at which performance requirements change has also shifted up a little bit, surreptitiously crept up to 25 miles per hour or 40k, as much as anything else to align itself with EU regulations. But it reminds the situation that UK minimum trailer braking performance up to 25 miles per hour is the poorest in the entire spectrum of Europe. In France, you needed 35%. In Italy, you needed 40%. In Germany, you needed 50%. The thing at the front has got 50%. Why the hell do the UK regulations permit what's behind it to have half that amount of braking efficiency? The only excuse was in 1979 with single line hydraulic brakes, that was about as far as we could go without load sensing. And most of the braking systems on trailers, or most of the trailer suspensions in those days were rocking beams, not sprung, and didn't have load sensing on them. And so they couldn't have more performance. So why the hell are we still talking about it? DFT would say that there just isn't a sufficient accident or injury out there on the road to justify action. And so therefore, it's all still the same as it ever was. It's been titivated around the edges a little bit. Gross weights have been increased as much as anything else, so you can put a bigger, heavier 300 horsepower tractor on the front of your 14-ton trailer. But in reality, people aren't using 14-ton trailers. 18 tons, 20 tons, 22-ton trailers, you can go and buy those tomorrow. No problem at all. They're all out there. That's what's being put on the back of a bent 939. That's what's traveling at 50k plus. The question is, what happens when it doesn't do quite what it should do?
Okay, well, I better draw things to a close now. If people have got time to stay on afterwards, I'm sure Andy can answer some more questions.
I'm happy to answer questions for at least the next half an hour or so if you wish to. I will draw a line at 2:30, but I'm happy to take questions until then if you want.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you, Andy, for taking some time out to present today. It's an incredibly important subject, as we all know. I think the UK laws still need to play catch up. We've still got this disparity with other countries and what the manufacturers are actually producing. Those who have seen the guide, I'm sure will agree it's a really nice, simply laid out, informative document. And if you've not seen it, then it's definitely worth a look. So just before we close, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today and hope you'll join us for our next lecture on the 15th of June, where we'll be joined by Dr. Alex Cook from Severn Trent, who is going to be talking about how nature's-based solutions are being adopted in the water industry. So all that's left to say is thanks again for everybody for joining, and see you next time. Bye-bye.